Welcome to the show. It's IB Nation Sports Talk. Yes, we're up and running. We're here. Salty put us on the clock, and we're here. We made it.
I'm taking this one on the chin. I'm literally sitting at the computer taking notes about the show. All of a sudden, I look up, it's 6:03. Oh, crap. I got to get in the show.
I'm supposed to be on the show.
I'm supposed to be doing something right now.
That's right.
That's on me.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. How was your day? Good otherwise?
It wasn't bad. Yeah, not too bad. Just worked a little bit of a honeydew list around the house today. And so, yeah, not too shabby.
Yeah.
Not too bad. A little day off, It's not bad.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. So you were out of school today.
I was, because I had to chaperone my first high school dance last night. So I needed all the sleep I could get.
A dance on Sunday night.
Because they're off today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So.
Okay. I get that, I guess.
Yeah.
Still odd. Like you can't play, like the IHSAA won't let you play sports on Sunday, but you can have a school dance on Sunday.
Oh, you can do pretty much anything besides IHSAA stuff, which is very interesting.
Very weird. Very weird.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, welcome to the show. Glad to have you with us here today. Hit the like button if you would. Subscribe, rate, and review. We're going to be talking, not just drafting, we're going to be talking all about the Irish assistant coaching staff today. We're doing a draft. We kind of came up with this. We're going to draft teams. There's 10 assistants on the staff, 10 official full-time assistants on the staff, not counting Matt Bayless, the football performance coach, not counting James Laurinaitis, who is technically considered a graduate assistant. So they won't be part of this. The 10 full-time assistants.
Right.
We're going to draft 2 teams of 5. And when we're all done, we're going to let our listeners decide who drafted the better fantasy Irish assistant coach team, I guess, tonight.
This is going to be very interesting because this is going to decide how I do things. Are we drafting for I need these coaches on my team? Like this is going to be my coaching staff, these 5 guys? Or is it just the best coaches that are, they did the best job today?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I think we're kind of doing it more especially since this was Marcus Freeman's first season.
Okay.
We're doing this more how'd they do this year, I guess.
Okay.
It doesn't have to strictly be along those lines.
Okay.
We're fairly, but it's not it's not like a dynasty draft, like the dynasty leagues and stuff like that. Like who's projecting better for the next 5 years or whatever. It's more about right now, maybe, you're stocking those coaches. Again, it's kind of, it's a little bit loose. I saw somebody, proposing trades already. So,
we've been trading with each other and I don't know how that's going to go, but we'll see what happens.
That's right. Here is the official coin of the draft.
Woo-hoo!
From 1990. It traveled all the way from that point to now. That's a little paraphrasing of No Country for Old Men. Remember when he flips the coin for the old man in the in the store?
Okay. I haven't seen that movie in a long time.
Yeah, I know. It's been a while. That's one of those. If it's on though, I can sit there and I'll flip over and where are they in the movie? Right.
Yeah.
Llewellyn's still on the bus,
Right.
So, all right. So we're going to draft assistant coaches. I'm going to flip the coin.
Okay.
You call it.
Oh, okay.
And then you can you can either go first or defer. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So here we go. Boom.
Heads.
You're calling heads. It is a head.
Yes.
Head. So Vince will get the first pick in the first ever Notre Dame football Fighting Irish assistant coaches draft. Before we start,
okay,
I want to throw something out there because I'm going to kind of reference some as we go through this and kind of talk about who we drafted and all that kind of stuff, who we did or didn't draft. There are 5 key statistics that are typically most predictive of a team of teams that reach the national championship game. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Pass efficiency offense, rush defense, total defense, and turnover margin.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about the
Okay.
coordinators
Good.
specifically, I'll probably reference some of those stats and kind of how they fared this year, as it kind of pertains to those specific markers. Okay.
You're always the stat guy. I love it. I'm just going from like gut feeling, what I see on the field, and
That's
you're gonna hit me hard with stats.
See, but I'm like the middle of the road stat guy because all these analytics people
Oh
like
yeah.
reference all these other hardcore stuff, and it's like it hits you in the
Yeah, I
head,
know,
and it's
right?
like,
Seriously.
man, come on. All right, Derek said we should have played rock paper scissors, and by the way, I've got a comment from Tommy Guns that we're going to use a little bit later
Ooh,
in
okay.
uh, in rapid fire tonight. I saw he posted it I actually voted on his poll on the board today.
Oh,
So
nice.
I'll be curious to see how you answer. I know how
Okay.
I answered. So
And before we get started, I want everybody to tell me who I should pick number one. Throw it in there. Let me know who I know who I'm going to pick, but I'm curious to see who everybody else would pick.
I'm curious to see who you go with. There are a couple of different routes.
There are.
I'm really curious to see who you go with here.
Yeah, and we probably can't wait too long just because I think there's a little bit of a delay with
Mm-hmm.
all of that going on. Tommy Gunn says I should take Harry Hiestand
Tommy says
first.
Harry.
Okay,
Yeah.
I get that. I get
He'd
that.
be he would be on my short list. The list is pretty short to begin with. There's
Well,
only
that's
10,
true.
but he's among the guys that's like, and like not knowing which direction you're going to go. I'm also trying to figure out, like I've been
Who's
kind
your
of
number
thinking about
one?
that. Like if Vince gets the first
Yeah,
pick, what do I do second?
I
All
know.
that kind of stuff.
I'm gonna
Tommy said
say
he also wouldn't be mad going with Mickens.
that's fair.
Number one.
I've got my 1 through 10, so I feel
Oh,
like
you got them ranked. You got
I'm
them
gonna
ranked.
stay pretty
Okay.
close to my board.
I
I
like it.
think depending on how you do, you know what I mean.
Sure.
So yeah. All right.
Okay. We got another Harry vote coming in.
Man, they're
From
coming in
Casey.
hard
I know.
with the
All right.
first
So who
pick.
you going with? The number one pick
Okay.
off the board in the Notre Dame football assistant coach draft.
With the first pick in the 2023 Notre Dame assistant coach draft, Vince D'Addario selects Brian Mason, special teams coordinator at the University of Notre Dame.
I think you did that because when we were formulating the idea for today's show,
You put the idea in my head.
the guy that I mentioned was Brian Mason, and so I gave away like I spoiled.
You did. You put it right in my head.
You knew who I coveted right away.
You put it right in my head, and I can't see. Here's the thing: he is directly responsible for a third of the game, and
Yeah.
we've seen very clearly how effective he can be and how he affects games. You know what I mean? And so
Yes.
it's an easy pick for me because I think he almost has the most direct impact on a game single-handedly.
Did you see the epic tweet thread that Brian Mason tweeted over the weekend all about
not.
special teams, his own
No, I
special
didn't.
teams?
He's feeling
Let me
himself, huh?
read you.
Okay.
I can still talk about it, even though I didn't get to draft him.
Absolutely.
so-
No, because we're going to draft, then we're going to talk about each guy. So, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Exactly. But you're absolutely right. Like he started off chaos kills, and that was a hashtag, by the way. Aggressive, tough, and disciplined mentality on special teams to win the battle of field position and generate explosive plays. Exclamation point. I mean, yeah, it's for starters. So then he says, average 2022 average field position, offensive starting field position, number one in the nation. They average starting out at the 33.4 yard line. Defensive field position, number 5 in the nation. Net starting position, number 2 in the nation. First time Notre Dame has been ranked in the top 10 in offensive field position, the best previous, number 13 in 2014. So
they never return punts.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Right? I mean, that makes a huge difference.
Got to play into it when you're actually out there making returns instead of just patent fair catching all the time. You've got at least a little bit better chance.
I mean, individually, Brandon Joseph, I think, finished 12th. At least the last time I looked at the rankings, and I can't remember if that was before the bowl game or after. But either way, I think he ranked 12th as a punt returner.
Right.
That makes a difference, guys. And I know, he never had the big, Tom Zibikowski return or that kind of stuff. But he gave you yards. And
It
he
adds
gave
up.
you better field position. And that's where that stat comes from.
Yeah, exactly. And he said they won 11 of the 13 games they won field position. That's 85%.
Yeah.
That's up from winning just 55% over the previous 5 seasons. So, in other words, they won 85% of the games this season when they won field position. Over the last 5 seasons, they only won 55% of the games when they won field position. They won field position by 10 plus yards 6 times in 13 games. Notre Dame did that just twice the previous 64 games. Think about that. They ranked number 24 in net punt, number 3 in opponent net punt. It's the second time in over a decade they've been in the top 25 in net punt. So all these different, again, like when you talk about the metrics that he's got on this, 6 different players combined to block 7 punts this season. Previous 10 seasons, this is the big one, I think, to most people. Previous 10 seasons, Notre Dame blocked a total of 6 punts. Again, like we heard again and again, oh, nobody blocks punts anymore. All these, formations
we heard it.
And
Yeah,
all
we
this
heard
different stuff. It's like, no, it's not that nobody blocks punts. It's just that you don't know how to figure out where the weakness is and how to attack it. And you're too afraid to attack it because you're afraid you're going to get a roughing the kicker penalty rather than, again, chaos, being aggressive, going after it, taking a little bit of chances. And that's what's also impressive is not only did they block these punts, but they didn't have any roughing calls in the meantime. Guys just being over aggressive, going out there and running into kickers and stuff like that.
I mean, I got to give a lot of credit to whoever his secretary is or analyst gatherer to come up with all these stats and everything. That's impressive stuff to come up with, man. But knowing him, it was probably him. He probably did it himself. He probably compiled all that himself. But
I'm sure it's like, well, you're the special teams coordinator. Other than recruiting, what have you been doing for the last couple of weeks? It's like he's sitting in his he's like the mad scientist sitting in his office. He's cooking up and figuring out all these different stats and stuff like that.
I'm sure he got a raise coming from Cincinnati to Notre Dame. Sure of it. I mean, why else would you uproot your family when you had a pretty good thing going on?
Right.
But he deserves a raise from his raise. Like that, his contract just needs to be ripped up and just start over again because you just read all the stats, but the increase in production from special teams from last year to this year, the last 10 years to this year is astronomical. It's off the charts.
Completely.
Of all the coaches, he deserves the biggest percentage raise. No doubt about it in my mind.
Yeah. And it's been it was a game changer. And when you had so many, especially the way this, again, like when you look at the way the season started,
and
the way it turned out, so many little things that can affect a game, things that quite honestly and quite obviously get taken for granted, and they were able to excel at it. And not only that, but they got buy-in from starters, starters wanting to be on special teams and starters impacting games on special teams. Look at Isaiah Foskey with his block punts. So.
Right. No doubt.
Okay. So Brian Mason is off the board.
Gone.
And there are a couple of different directions I can go here. I've got to make a pick now. You kind of back me into a corner a little bit. But I've got to go with my man, Harry Hiestand.
Oh, there it is.
I mean, there's a backup plan, but I'm not gonna, I can't give that away because I don't want you snaking another pick from me here. But so you got Brian Mason. I've got a Harry Hiestand. And like when you look at what Harry did, last year they ran for 4.1 per carry, and that got a little bit better as the season went on. That offensive line under Quinn gave up 35 sacks. And that's 4.1 per carry and 143 per game with Kyron Williams.
Yeah.
After the year that Kyron Williams had the year before that, they go from that to 189 rushing yards a game, 4.6 per carry. So they go up by an average of a half a yard per carry, which is pretty considerable when you think about it. And they give up just 21 sacks. So 14 fewer sacks they gave up this year as well. So got to go with Harry. And again, the line improved over the course of the season. And I just have to imagine that with Harry here now and with him also recruiting the kind of guys that he's looking for that offensive line, I think we're going to, just see considerable changes improvements / changes over the next few years with Harry Hiestand back.
I mean, it's hard to argue Harry Hiestand, obviously. If Brian Mason didn't come in and do what he did, he'd be one of my top picks. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Wow, that's harsh. I mean, look, Brian Mason's not a big guy. I get that. But
I mean, he's wiry and he's quick,
and he's not 60. So saying.
That's very true.
Although I do know of one 30-something that got yelled at by Harry Hiestand while he was filming him at practice, and he still talks about that to this day.
Does he?
Oh yeah.
That's funny. It's funny because I heard about it without actually hearing it happen. I heard about it happening, and I gave him a little bit of a hard time.
Oh, it's great. It was great. He sent me the clip the other day, so he's like, "Oh, he's just yelling at me." Oh, it's great. But anyway, I mean, you can't go wrong with Harry Hiestand. He's a proven commodity. You know what you're going to get from him. I love watching him coach. You're going to have accountability on the offensive line. They're going to be fundamentally sound. They're going to get better as the year goes on. I mean, it's a no-lose situation going with Harry Hiestand. Are you kidding me? I mean, it's just the only reason I went with Brian Mason over Harry Hiestand is because he affects a little bit more of the game.
Right.
That kind of a thing. And, well, I mean, the offensive line.
Look, you don't have to explain it. It's who I would have picked if I had the first pick.
I mean, I guess I'm more explaining it to the chat because a lot of them wanted to go Harry first, and I get it. You can't really go wrong in either direction.
Yeah,
so,
I agree. That's if you had the second pick and I had Mason off the board, would you have gone with Harry, or was there someone else you were considering?
There was actually the way I ranked them. If I went true to my board, I actually have somebody ranked higher than Harry for this year.
Ooh.
Yeah, I do.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so I'm gonna stay true to my board for my second pick.
Okay,
are we ready for it?
Yeah. So we got Vince has Brian Mason. I've got a Harry Hiestand. Vince's pick again.
Yep.
Who do you have now?
I am going to the defensive side of the ball, and for my second pick, I am going to go with Mike Mickens.
All right. I had a feeling it might be that, but I was worried. My guy's still on the board, so I'm happy about that. But I would have got, Mike Mickens is a good pick as well.
You can't go wrong with Mike Mickens because he took number one, his recruiting has been outstanding. I mean, he has identified guys that are really good. I mean, and he's done a very good job of that. Number two, the secondary, specifically corner, because everybody was all excited about, Brandon Joseph coming in and kind of solidifying the safety position. Whether that happened or not is another conversation. But corner was the big liability. Corner was the big question mark coming into the season. We were high on what the front seven was going to do. We felt pretty good about what safety was going to do. Corner, everybody was like, what are we going to get from corner? And he ends up taking, Benjamin Morrison. Obviously, his freshman campaign was unbelievable.
Right.
I think, Cam Hart took a step in the right direction, whether people believe it or not. There's a reason that they kept throwing at Benjamin Morrison.
He started slowly, and I think that's kind of,
what people remember.
What people remember. What you don't remember is as the season goes on, exactly what you're talking about. They weren't throwing at him. They were taking their chances at the guy who ended up getting the interceptions all the time. And so now you've got both of these guys on film, and that's going to be just a great duo to watch next season.
And then you throw in Tariq Bracy, who was arguably the best corner that they had. I mean, he was so steady. I mean, just so steady and just so disruptive from the nickel position. That's a spot they're going to miss next year. And I'm not saying that the Harper kid can't be a good nickel and all of that, But man, you are going to miss Tariq Bracy and what he brought to the table.
But let's also not forget what an up and down career Tariq Bracy had to start his career off. And then since Mike Mickens has been there, finding that nickel spot has been big for him, and it's been big for the team as well. But
no doubt,
he ended up thriving after Mike Mickens arrived.
Yep.
So
it's
not a coincidence.
And say what you want to about Clarence Lewis, but he had his up and downs from a mental standpoint as well. And I think he's done a good job of working with, Mickens has done a really good job of working with him and getting him back to where he's a very serviceable, member of this secondary. He starts on a lot of teams across the country. He's not going to start over Cam Hart and Benjamin Morrison, which is why we talk about the move to safety, so you can get his skill set on the field. But he was in a dark place mentally as well. And Mickens was able to work him out of it. So, what he's been able to do on and off the field with these corners, I think is fantastic. So makes for an easy number 2 pick from me.
Yep. I agree. Salty asks if we can draft Chad Bowden as Tommy Gunn.
He's an assistant, not an assistant coach. He's support staff. So he's not on the table.
Support staff not included.
Yeah.
So
very important for what he does.
He is.
But support staff not included.
Sounded like he had a great weekend out there.
It sounds like the weekend went fantastic.
Yeah.
I want to know where he comes up with some of the shtick that he does.
Like this whole get out of the car, we're frisking you.
Yeah, with the whole Secret Service bid. And I don't know. I was trying to put myself in the shoes of the recruits and like the parents of the recruits and like that kind of thing. Like, it'd be funny to watch my kid get frisked, I guess. I don't know. It's just like, where do you come up with that? Like, where does that come from? Is that like from his own mind? I don't know. It's creative. I give him that.
Yeah, for sure. But he's not part of this draft.
No, he's not.
So Vince has got Brian Mason, Mike Mickens. I went Harry Hiestand with my first pick. I don't think it's probably going to be a surprise where I'm going with my pick. Number 2.
I'm a little surprised because I'm not sure.
I saw Salty make reference to it already. And, I've got the offensive line coach. So if I've got the offensive line coach, I've got to go with the position coach that those guys are, plowing and paving the way for. I got to go with the running backs coach, Dylan McCullough. And I got to tell you, nothing against Mike Mickens, because I agree with everything you said about Mike Mickens, but I'm not unhappy to see Dylan McCullough fall in this spot.
And he was in my number 4 spot, so he would have been the next off the board for me as well. And you can't go wrong with Dylan McCullough based on the production that his room had. And they will arguably, if we're talking about the recruiting trail as well here, and I think that's part of it, right? That's part of it. So.
And we haven't even really mentioned that. Like you can't include, recruiting is part of this whole deal as well.
Yeah. His room is going to be the best running back room top to bottom in the country next year. And good luck arguing that point. Come on.
Audric Estime ended up leading the team with 920 yards, 12 total touchdowns, but he also had 135 receiving yards. So he's over 1,000 total yards. Logan Diggs, he's over 1,000 total yards. He actually had over 200 receiving yards and 6 total touchdowns. Chris Tyree, that's like, I think we all thought that there could be more production from him, figuring that out. And I think that, that's kind of the confluence of the coach and the guys at the positions.
Sure.
And, the coordinator, that whole mix, kind of what guys got out there. But so you get 2 guys over 1,000 total yards who combined for 18 touchdowns out of the backfield, and then 5 more touchdowns from Chris Tyree, and pushing 600 yards from him, which is still pretty good. And Jadarian Price was pretty much the guy who we all thought was going to be the guy.
Yeah.
If he had hadn't gotten hurt. And look at the way the running back room ended up in year 1. And I think you mentioned it. Just the way he continues to recruit as well, because you add some of this other young talent. You add Love to the mix next year, and you still got Jabron Payne as well. I think you said it, they're going to be the best running back room in the country. I think it would be hard to beat.
And the problem is, it's like loading your team up with point guards. It's like there's only one ball to go around, and that's what worries me, because somebody's going to transfer. I mean, of all of these guys, somebody's going to transfer out, and wherever they end up, they're going to get themselves one hell of a running back. And so, Dylan McCullough, it's almost like the wealth is overwhelming, because now he's got to deal with the fact that he's got all these dudes in his room. And how does he manage that? How do you manage all of those egos? And I don't mean ego in a negative way. I just mean that as in, these guys are all really good. Like, they can all run the football. They can all be effective. What do you do with that, with this embarrassment of riches? That's where 21 personnel comes in, baby. Little 21, exactly, little 31, little 30. Do what you got to do. You got to get these boys on the field.
That's right. That's exactly right. 20, 21, 30. I think you're exactly right. You can split those guys all over the place.
Yeah.
Put them out there. Like I said, man, they can catch passes. Just look at what they did. And I really still think, so the three guys, 135 for Estime, 211 for Diggs. So that is 346. And then you add in 138 from Tyree. That is 476, like over 480 total yards receiving from those three guys. I think they easily could have been up around 700 total yards if they really wanted to. But, I think that Michael Mayer, who ends up leading the team in receiving again, and we'll touch on, something kind of related to that in rapid fire here in a little bit. I think there's still a lot of untapped potential from this running back room that we can see more of next year. And again,
absolutely.
I know I kind of beat the drum and beat the dead horse about the 21 personnel and all of that. But the more it shapes up that this is the position group of strength with that many talented guys, and like Dylan McCullough talked when he came in the door, I think it was like 8 different jobs for the running backs and stuff like that, figuring out who gets the jobs to keep them all involved. I just have to think with a bigger room that you're probably going to see multiples out there a lot of different times next season, and Notre Dame's going to be able to take advantage of it. So
that could be a lot of fun too, just to see a lot of. Yeah, it's definitely not a Colts jersey.
This is my throwback Staubach jersey.
Come on, guys, the Cowboys are playing tonight.
Don't give me your Harbaugh stuff. I know it doesn't look like their current jersey. This is the blue that I prefer. Yes. Actually, not the navy blue. This is the Cowboys old school blue that I prefer. They're starting to use more of it. I just wish they would use it in their actual uniforms, but I don't get to make the decisions. The guy with all the money does.
Well, he makes a lot of decisions he shouldn't be making, but that's a different conversation.
Yes. All right. So you got Mason and Mickens. I've got Hiestand and McCullough. 4 of the 10 are off the board.
Yep.
Where are you going next with your third pick, Vince?
Well, this is where it gets dicey. The first 4 were easy for me. And after that, I was like, okay, what order do I put these guys in? Because somebody that has already been mentioned in the chat, I have it 9. So it's like, and I have my reasoning behind it, but this is, like I said, this is where it gets dicey. And this is going to be my first controversial pick, I think, with my third pick in the draft.
Okay.
But I can defend it, and I will defend it to my dying day. With my third pick in the 2023 assistant coach draft, I am drafting Thomas Rees, offensive coordinator / quarterbacks coach at the University of Notre Dame.
I'm curious to see what the chat thinks about that.
Well, I know it's going to be controversial, and I get it, but I'm drafting the Tom Rees that I saw in the Fiesta Bowl, that I saw in the Gator Bowl, that I've seen adapt to his personnel throughout the season. I know Tommy's not going to like it. I get it. But at the same time, I think he is growing as an offensive coordinator. His game plan in the Gator Bowl, I thought was fantastic. And he is the guy. And you also have to look at it this way. He has a ton on his plate, right? I mean, he's the game plan. Like, he comes up with the game plan. He calls the plays. You got to take that into account versus, like, for example, a tight ends coach or somebody that just has a couple guys to coach. I've got to give Tommy Rees his credit. I want him on my staff. I want him on my group.
They averaged just under 32 points a game this season with the backup quarterback starting 10 games.
Yeah.
Now remember the 5 key statistical categories that I mentioned at the start of this whole exercise about the 5 key predictors, statistical predictors of whether or not you are shaping up to be, a playoff / national championship type team. Pass efficiency offense and rush offense were the 2 big offensive indicators. They were number 32 in pass efficiency offense this year. Georgia was number 6. TCU was number 15. And again, that's with the quarterback who ended up completing 55% of his passes for the season, and they were still number 32 in that metric. Rush offense, Notre Dame was number 35 and 189 yards per game. TCU was number 31, so they weren't that far behind TCU. Georgia was number 19, not considerably, a whole lot behind Georgia even. So again, with the running backs that they've got and with the offensive line, I just think that,
And see, here's the thing. Everybody in the country and everybody in every stadium that they ever went to knew they wanted to run the ball.
Right.
And that they really couldn't do a whole lot of other things because of what they had working with at the quarterback position.
Right.
You give Tom Rees a quarterback that can spread the ball around. Now defenses are going to have to pick their poison. I think every one of those numbers goes up because now he's going to have a quarterback that you have to respect his arm. Those numbers go up, man. I'm telling you.
I think they've got a chance to be, top 10 to 15 in both of those next year.
Absolutely.
You add the quarterback that they're adding to go along with the offensive line, to go along with the running backs. The receivers are going to be the key piece to this, what they can get out of what's going to be a really young wide receiver group, with the exception of obviously bringing in the grad transfer. But you're going to have a really young group, and a lot of it's going to be on Chancey Stuckey at that point.
100%. The spotlight is on Chancey Stuckey, if I'm being honest, because we know what Sam Hartman brings to the table. Even if you take all of his numbers and all, you just median, right down the middle. Some receivers are going to have to step up and be valuable parts of this offense, right? And I'm not saying that they can't be that they don't have the potential to be that.
Right.
But there's going to be a spotlight on Chancey Stuckey, who, by the way, is only going into his 3rd year as a full-time wide receivers coach, right? And he did a fantastic job this year. I think he did a great job this year. He's on my list, obviously, but it's even more so because it was the great unknown last year. Now we know, what is he going to be able to bring to the table?
See, here's, the troll sniper. They're both sides to this argument. He says, I feel like Marcus forced Tommy's hand on running the ball this season. Can't credit him for that much, especially since Hiestand and McCullough also deserve credit for our rushing. That's true, but it's also up to the offensive coordinator to call plays and, the way they're, the timing of the plays and the design of the plays, what plays you're going to call when and what personnel packages and all that. And the other side of it is, especially early on when you heard Marcus Freeman talking about kind of how I said this a few times throughout the course of the season, they were more conservative this year than I thought they were going to be. Than maybe a lot of people thought they were going to be after losing Brian Kelly. I think, we all kind of made the assumption after seeing that game plan in the Fiesta Bowl that it was, it's Brian Kelly that's holding things back. But defensive coaches tend to have a more conservative offensive approach. Like they have to protect the defense. And it felt like, especially early on, like that was maybe the guidance, the hand, the nudge, whatever you want to call it, that Marcus Freeman had on the offense. Like, okay, Tommy, it's still your offense to call, but here's kind of my vision of this whole thing.
Well, and I feel like Marcus Freeman was also very candid, as the season was progressing. He slowly took his hands off the steering wheel a little bit offensively. And I think that he allowed Tommy Rees to be a little bit more himself as the season progressed. Because I agree with you. The game plan for Ohio State and the game plan for Marshall was very clearly what Marcus Freeman wanted them to do.
Right.
I have no doubt in my mind that that's the case, right? And I just feel like he let loose of the reins a little bit as the season progressed, all the way to the end of the season, where it was completely unrecognizable if you watch the offense in the last game of the bowl game to the Ohio State game. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but it was a completely different philosophy, and I just feel like that was more Tommy Rees than the beginning of the season. So yeah, I completely agree with you. I think Marcus Freeman was very much, he's a defensive minded coach. Hey, offense, don't screw it up. Run the
Yeah.
ball, be conservative, do your thing, and we'll, keep the points down and we'll be right in every game. And it almost worked against Ohio State, to be honest with you. They had a little
Right.
bit more punch to the offense. They win that game, frankly, right? But I don't think that that's a sustainable game plan for the whole season. And I think they proved that.
Yep, I concur. All right.
You're up, dude.
So now I've got a decision to make, and it's getting a little bit tougher here with 5 coaches, half the staff off the board at this point. And I've been going back and forth, and I think, again, because recruiting is part of this, it's not just on the field stuff, but in part for that reason, with my third pick in the 2022 assistant coach or the 2023 assistant coach draft, I'm going to go with Chancey Stuckey, the wide receivers coach.
So I had next. This is my next. It's on my board.
How many times do you say that during a fantasy draft?
I know, right?
I was going
to be my guy.
That's right. So, again, like when you look at the guys he's got coming in, just like start with that and kind of work backwards. He's already gone out and was able to get a key, what's a position that they really needed a transfer? Wide receiver. And they went out as soon as the offseason was over, and they got Caleb Smith from Virginia Tech, a guy who averaged 18.2 yards per catch last year. And now you pair him up with Sam Hartman, a veteran quarterback. I think that that's going to be a really good combination. But then the freshmen that he's got coming in, Braylon James, Jaden Greathouse, Rico Flores, the biggest question, everyone's going to want to know right away is how soon are they going to be on the field? How soon are they going to produce, because you still have kind of a mixed bag. But Tobias Merriweather was at least trending in the right direction at the end of the season before the concussion stuff. Still ended up with just the one catch for 41 yards. But we saw really good strides from Jaden Thomas this year. We saw really good strides the second half of the season after Colsey was healthy, especially like as a third down possession type guy. We saw him making plays, more than we've seen from either one of those guys last year. That's for sure. And then, Lorenzo's style's very inconsistent, but it's like, I think maybe, again, like you might have to go to the mental coach, to figure some of that out, just with the drops and stuff like that.
His name
Still
is
a great
Mickens.
talent.
Yeah. He's the mental coach. Mike Mickens. He's the guy. He's all you need.
All right.
Just have him talk to Mike.
Yeah. So Chancey Stuckey is the third guy on my board.
So I have adjusted. Well, let me talk about Chancey Stuckey here for a second. We kind of touched on him a little bit earlier, and like I said, I think this year is going to be a real defining year for Chancey Stuckey, because last year, again, there wasn't a whole lot of expectations because the depth chart wasn't very long. He didn't have a lot of experience. We were all kind of surprised when he got the job or when he was named, as one of the finalists, that kind of a thing. And so we kind of warmed to it. And I think he did a good job. I like what I saw from him, at the practices that we were allowed to go to. And I thought he didn't get out of the gate very well at the beginning of the season. We saw a lot of the, but it's tough to break a lot of those habits. Yeah. You can drill a kid and drill a kid and drill a kid. And I mean by running drills in a practice, not like drilling a kid. Right. But like you can drill these kids all you want, but when the lights come on and you're in a game situation, sometimes you fall back to your old ways. And I'm not saying that that's all the kids' fault. I'm not saying that it's all Chancey Stuckey's fault, but that's a long road that he had to traverse with these kids. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think we started to see it. I think we started to see his impact on this position group this year. Now, this year is going to be a whole other ball game because he has taken care of that foundational stuff. And now, thanks, Tommy. And now he has an opportunity to get an influx of a lot of young talent. He's got an opportunity to take some of these guys that were on the roster this year who we would still consider young. I mean, Thomas, Colsey, Merriweather, those guys are all still young. I mean, in the grand scheme of things. And so can he take those guys to the next step? Can he help Lorenzo Styles, as Tyler said? Can he help Lorenzo Styles get out of the funk that he's in this year? Because that kid has a ton of talent, and if he can't get him out of that funk, that's going to be a problem for Notre Dame and the wide receiving core. So bit of a spotlight on Chancey Stuckey moving forward, but he deserves a lot of credit for what he's done thus far on the staff.
Absolutely.
So, just want to give you credit for that pick because that's the one I would have gone with next.
All right.
Where
are you going now?
Of course, we've already chewed up 45 minutes of this. But anyway, I shook up kind of the middle of my board. I dropped my original person that I had in my 7th position all the way down to 9
already. Okay.
All the way down to 9, and then I bumped the other 2 above. So,
okay.
Somebody that got a benefit here, the bump above, is Chris O'Leary. And I think Chris O'Leary is an underrated, underappreciated guy on this staff. You and I had the opportunity, what was it, last year during fall camp. They had practice in the stadium, and where they had us sitting, we were literally sitting about 10 feet away from Chancey Stuckey and his position group because that's where they were kind of doing their thing. And, we could he was a brand new coach at the time. We were listening and we were hearing him coach. And, man, I was really impressed with the way he was coaching those guys up. And he was coaching guys like Hamilton, the same as he was coaching, the guys that are 3rd or 4th on the depth chart.
Right.
And I think that's fantastic, especially for a young guy who's coming in. Yeah, I believe he was a graduate assistant. He was kind of on the staff. He kind of knew these guys. But still, when you're a young guy, it is very easy to gravitate towards the talent and to coach the talent. He coaches the entire depth chart. And that was clearly evident this year as well. I mean, he took a guy who was recruited as a wide receiver, turned him into a safety. Was it the smoothest of transitions all the time with Xavier Watts? No, but I think he's our most reliable safety going into next year. He's the only guy I have circled as an automatic start next year at the safety position.
That's true.
You got to give a lot of credit to Chris O'Leary for that, and I think he's done a good job. The best he can do with DJ Brown. I thought he's brought Ramon Henderson along very well. I think the issues that Brandon Joseph had were not coaching issues. That's my personal opinion. I think it was more business decision issues there towards the latter stages. There's nothing a coach can do about that, right? Now, the ding, I guess you could say, from a recruiting standpoint, is they did lose out on Peyton Bowen. But I do like the guy. I like Adon Schuler. Of course, I like Hillman. I think he's probably going to end up at safety. So he's going to still have an opportunity to make a name for himself as far as coaching up younger guys. I think he did a really good job this year. So Chris O'Leary is my 4th pick.
Yeah, I do too, especially when you consider there was no Kyle Hamilton and Brandon Joseph was supposed to be,
right,
at least in that ballpark, and it never really lived up to the billing. So I think what he did, you mentioned the Xavier Watts and that transition, and you're absolutely right. Like the way he played late in the season, he's going to be a starter back there. There are still some questions, but some of that comes on him now, just in terms of you're right. They lost that on Peyton Bowen, but again, I don't put that. I don't put the loss of Bowen on anyone on this coaching staff.
That's fair.
You're going to dangle enough cash, someone's going to jump.
I know, right?
That's really what it comes down to. And the fact that they were able to navigate things without Brandon Joseph for about the last third or so of the season, I think that speaks to what he was able to do developmentally with some of those other guys as well. It's like you got to go out and win some recruiting battles now here
for sure.
Years.
And what he was able to do the last third of the season when they didn't have Kyle Hamilton last year with the safety position, right? I mean, or maybe it was half the season without Kyle Hamilton, right? I mean, that's a tough sledding job for a first-year position coach. You just lost your stud, your security blanket, and now you're expected to put, 2 to 3 safeties on the field that know what the hell they're doing. So
Right.
it's not always the easiest thing to do.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. All right. So you've got Chris O'Leary, and I'm just going to go right back to the offensive side of the board.
You
And
got
I'm going to
all
go.
offensive coaches, Stiers.
I do. I've got a whole offensive staff. Now, all that's left is 2 defensive coaches after this.
Yeah.
So I'll end up with somebody. But yeah, so I've got Jared Parker to go along with Harry Hiestand, D'Lo McCullough, and Chancey Stuckey. I've got all offensive guys. I've got all the offensive guys with the exception of Tommy Reese. But, I mean, like on the one hand, how much coaching did it take to maximize Michael Mayer? But at the same time, like Eli Raridan was not supposed to be a great blocking tight end coming out of high school. And you can argue that he was their best blocker when he was healthy out there early on before he got hurt. And then Holden Stays made some contributions, and Mitchell Evans, when he came back and was healthy, we started to see good, again, like the Gator Bowl kind of highlighted it, but so I think that there's still a little bit maybe incomplete with Jared Parker, right? Again, like I do want to see these guys continue to develop as blockers, because I think that overall as a group, that is still maybe the biggest knock on this group, because tight ends are about more than pass catching. They've got to be good run blockers as well, and we've got to see continued improvement in that department for me.
No doubt. And he was next on my list as well. I think that's a good pick, and I do think that you could make the argument that you had the best tight end in the country. Good job coaching. But we just made an argument for Chris O'Leary, who had the best safety in the country last year, and we gave him a lot of credit, right? So
yep.
I think it's it's what he does with the depth chart and what he did. I mean, there's a lot of talent there at tight end, and I think he did a really good job with that talent. I mean, and he had to deal with some injuries as well, and he was able to fight through that from a coaching standpoint and have the next guy up ready to go. And there was really no drop. Yes, there was a drop off for Michael Mayer. Yes, there's always going to be a drop off, right? But there was no like South Carolina. They had one tight end on their depth chart for the Gator Bowl, right? Notre Dame wasn't in that position. It's like, this guy's hurt. We're going to go to this guy. Oh, this guy's hurt. We're going to go to this guy. Like, they could have had 3 tight ends on the depth chart without any problem, no matter what time of the year it was, right?
Right.
And that's a testament to recruiting. It's also a testament to, Coach Parker having those guys ready to go. So I give him a lot of credit. He was next on my list too, no doubt.
So as it is now, we've each got 4, and that leaves us with 2 guys left. We've got the defensive coordinator, Al Golden, and we've got the defensive line coach, Al Washington. So it is your pick, Vince. Who are you going with?
So it is a lesser of 2 evils here to a degree, and I'm going to go with the other coordinator, and I'm going to go with Al Golden. I've got both coordinators, so I feel pretty good about that. But, and Al Golden, he has some work to do going into next year. You are the defensive coordinator. There were times where, I didn't necessarily agree with the way the defensive game plan was put together. First half of the season, I wasn't all that enthusiastic about some of the game plan change-ups at halftime, the adjustments, things like that. I think he got better as the year went on. I thought he made adjustments in the Gator Bowl before halftime, like end of the first quarter, and was able to basically shut down South Carolina's offense pretty much from that point forward after the first quarter. But they also weren't overly prepared for that game either from a defensive standpoint. So, I mean, both things have to be taken into account. And then, of course, he is the linebackers coach. And I think we can all agree that of all the position groups, they were probably the most disappointing as a group for a myriad of reasons. Was it because they didn't play the younger guys? Were the older guys not prepared enough? Were they just not athletic enough? Then why aren't you getting those other guys some time? Like, we could go down the rabbit hole on this, but Al Golden needs to do a better job moving forward, period, if he wants to remain at Notre Dame. I am not advocating for him to be fired, but I am advocating for him to do a better job moving forward. So
No, I agree.
That's why
And
he ends up where he is.
hopefully he worked some things out, like he found
Right.
some things out about himself and with an off season with a defensive minded head coach, maybe he and Marcus Freeman can collaborate a little bit more on philosophy and just some different things. There were some definite whiffs that he had, like the
Yeah.
zero blitz against Ohio State being the one that everyone talks about the most, but the next week as well, whiffing on 3rd and 9 against Marshall late in the game that leads to the touchdown. What was it, 94-yard touchdown drive? And that's a 94. Now, one thing that there wasn't as much of, like the first part of last season, Marcus Freeman's season as defensive coordinator, we saw many more explosive plays by opposing offenses. We didn't see as many of those. We just saw troubling trends, kind of, that some of which you just outlined. The two biggest things to me are you've got to get better on 3rd down. You've got to get better in the red zone. Those are there were so many opportunities to get off the field. They were not able to get off the field. The whole KISS, keep it simple, stupid. That's really, I think, what it comes down to in a lot of ways. Now, all that said, like those key stats I was talking about earlier, rush defense, Notre Dame was number 37. Like Georgia was number 1 this year. TCU was 79. So firmly right in the middle of those two teams who played for the national championship with rush defense. And now it's the worst rush defense I think they've had in the last 5 years. But at the same time, 37 is not horrible. There's room for improvement.
Sure.
You get better with the defensive line. You get better, more consistent, at least, with the linebackers. I think that's the big thing. Like the run fits for some of these linebackers at times were just puzzling this year. But they've got to get better there. But again, number 37, respectable enough. I think like Alabama and LSU both won national championships ranking in the 30s before. If the offense improves the way you think it are, and you think it can, and the run defense is still around 30, 35, I think you're going to be okay. Total defense, they were actually number 22 in total defense this year. Again, this is one of those 5 key stats I was talking about, 329 yards a game. Because it's like, I mean, we saw it against South Carolina, all the early touchdown drives, and then all of a sudden it's 3 and out, punt, all these punts, and it's like feast or famine sometimes.
Sure.
But again, more consistent. And then turnover margin, they were number 85 in the nation this year. There's no doubt, like they didn't force enough turnovers.
Yeah, especially early. Yeah.
Yep. If they forced, around what they forced late in the season, they would have ended up being okay. But they were just, it took them forever to get any turnovers, and that's got to get better. They got to figure out a way to cause some more havoc on the ball next year.
I could not agree more. I mean, it was. You saw some greatness. I mean, if you watch the Clemson game and you watch the defensive game plan against Clemson, I mean, they were rallying to the football. They kept trying to go, to the sideline and get wide, and they were just all over that stuff, right? And it was awesome. It was such a great defensive performance. And then you saw like Marshall, and it's like, the heck, man. Like,
I know.
And then you saw, against USC, who does not have a vaunted offensive line, and they were just able to run the ball whenever they wanted. And so that's disturbing. You can't be like that. You've got to figure out what your identity is. You've got to stick to it, and you've got to be good at it. So we've seen flashes, but it's not consistent enough in any way.
Yeah. Okay, so you've got Al Golden. Your staff is complete. Brian Mason, Mike Mickens, Tommy Reese, Chris O'Leary, and Al Golden. My staff is Harry Hiestand, Dylan McCullough, Chancey Stuckey, Jared Parker, and my final pick goes to the defensive line coach, Al Washington. He becomes Mr. Irrelevant for the purposes of this draft. He and Brock Purdy. So,
that's great.
Yeah. So, I mean, which is the bigger thing that you think Al Washington has to do better right now? Is it the developmental side, the actual on-field developmental side, or is it the recruiting side of things?
Well, for me, I mean, it's the answer is obviously both. But what's more important is I think the developmental side right now, because you've got a lot of guys that we just don't know if they're going to be able to step in and fill the roles
Mm-hmm.
that they need to fill. And I mean, look, if we're being honest, you've got to blame the last defensive line coach. If these guys aren't the guys who you think they are, there's part of it is development, but part of it you've got to look back at recruiting, right? The defensive line recruiting hasn't been amazing over the last 5 years. It's been okay, right? It's been good. But like the Adamalola brothers, they didn't commit to Mike Elston. They committed to Keith Gilmore. I mean, that's just a fact. So, you can't put it all on Al Washington, but with capital B-U-T, this year is going to be very telling for Al Washington because he's got guys with high ceilings on that defensive line. And if they don't start to peak, if they don't start to get there, if they're not able to fill the roles that they need to fill moving forward, how is that not on him? And then you throw in the recruiting part, and then you're looking at, well, maybe we need to look at making a change. And so in the intermediate, or like in the immediate, it's development. You have to develop these guys. I think there's talent there. I really do.
Yeah.
But they've got to be developed.
I think it was important to get Jean-Baptiste from Ohio State to bring in a guy with some experience. And I know, like as we've talked about guys like Hartman and Jean-Baptiste, there were some people who kind of turned their nose up at it. Well, if they were so good, why aren't they in the NFL? Well, look, Notre Dame still predominantly has to go the grad transfer route. And if you're in the grad transfer market, that means you're in your 5th year. And if you're in your 5th year, that by definition means you weren't quite good enough, to be in the NFL, or else you would be bolting for the NFL. So you take some chances with some of those guys. And in all the cases, the 3 most significant ones, the receiver, and maybe 4 really, the receiver, the safety, the quarterback, and the defensive end, I think all things considered, they made out pretty well, especially with the quarterback. Like everyone across the country is raving about, the quarterback and the things that he can do. We're talking about Al Washington, though, right now. And I agree with everything you said. It's got to start with the development because of what he's got on the roster right now, but he's also got to go out and hit at a high rate in the recruiting to make up for the fact that, at least for right now, the development is lacking.
Right.
To help compensate for some of that. I don't know. I don't know where else to go.
No, look, he's going to have a spotlight on himself too. I mean, he has to do a better job. The defensive line they were good, but they weren't the dominating defensive line that we thought that they were going to be going into the season. That's what I'll say. No. They just weren't.
And look, you can talk about the linebackers, and there's plenty to pick apart with the linebackers, but the guys in front, just like running backs, on the other side, running backs to the offensive line, linebackers to the defensive line, the guys in front of the linebackers are supposed to help make their jobs easier. And I don't think that was necessarily the case. You had issues at both levels. We all know that's got to get better, but it starts with a point of attack. I think Marcus Freeman has talked about many times they want to be an offensive, defensive line driven team. Well, if you want to be a defensive line driven team, you got to start getting it done. There's just no way around it.
Yeah.
And,
I agree.
Like we talked about the loyalty that BK had to guys that went too long, it's like, how long is some of that loyalty going to last? Because they've got the ties together, with Ohio State and all that stuff.
Yep. So, agreed.
Yeah. All right. Are you happy with with the staff that you drafted?
I'm actually incredibly happy with the staff that I drafted. And we can throw it to the chat if you want to. But so my team is Brian Mason, Mike Mickens, Tommy Reese, Chris O'Leary, Al Golden.
And mine is Harry Hiestand, Dylan McCullough, Chancey Stuckey, Jared Parker, Al Washington.
So I feel good about it. I'm just saying.
I feel pretty good about mine too.
Yeah.
But I felt good about my actual fantasy team, after I drafted them back in August.
How'd
And
that go for you?
it ended up being like 5th or 6th in the league or something
Mm.
like that. So I don't know. I got 1 vote from Salty. Gavin gives Vince a vote. Gavin says Vince by 1, so we're even right now.
I got Washington's bringing you down, but you didn't really have a choice there. So
yeah, that's right. I'm curious if I had the first pick, like how it would have shaken out.
Yeah, well, it would have shaken out differently. That's for sure.
I think so.
It would.
Vince went with Brian Mason first. I went with Hiestand first. So, all right. Well, that was fun. Got to dissect them all. Are you ready for rapid fire now, Vince?
Oh, baby, I'm always ready. You got some good ones in here today. I'm excited.
All right. Fill in the blank. Michael Mayer has been Notre Dame's leading receiver for the last 3 years. He's gone. So next year's leading receiver will be blank.
See, this one's tough. Are we okay? So is it catches or yards? What do you think?
I think catches.
Okay.
Because technically, I think maybe his freshman year, I don't think he had the yards, but he did have the receptions.
Okay.
Anyway, if I remember right. I think Javon McKinley might have had him in the actual yards.
See, I've been going back and forth on this one ever since I read the question, and you could go any direction with this that you wanted because it just depends. Like I feel like Thomas should be, because I think he should be starting at the slot, and I think he should get a lot of attention and a lot of mismatches in Notre Dame's favor. And I think he could just come up with a ton of catches. So I feel like that would be the answer if I was running the offense. But I think maybe early on, they're going to rely on veteran leadership, and I think Caleb Smith might end up with the most catches.
But you're going with Caleb Smith.
Yeah, huh? I think so. As much as I want it to be Thomas, I do. I want it to be Thomas, but I don't think that's going to happen. I don't know.
That's interesting. And like, I think, and I've been thinking about this all day. Caleb Smith was definitely one of my options. And I think that Jaden Thomas is going to be in the mix. I don't think a tight end is going to be nearly in the mix the way, like Michael Mayer was the last 3 years.
It'll be an option, but they won't be leading the team. By,
again, like if Tommy Rees is deploying an offense that is suited to the strength of this team, you've got to see more running backs on the field next year. And that's going to negate, some of the tight end type stuff. I'm going to say that Lorenzo Styles,
ooh, I like it,
gets his gray matter together, and he becomes the guy that we saw in the Fiesta Bowl last year more consistently.
I love where your head's at on that, because I wanted to go that route. I was like, but it just so I guess I'm afraid of getting picked on because I was like, oh, nobody's going to think that's actually accurate. But I love that pick because he has the absolute talent to be a number one receiver in this offense. 100%.
Absolutely. And again, now he's going to have an experienced quarterback throwing him the ball, a guy who knows how to throw guys open, a guy who knows how to throw the ball downfield, and a guy who will be able to do some other stuff as well. And I just think that with a quarterback who is not locked in on predominantly on the intermediate target all the time, there's just so many more things. It's like you have to wonder when the ball is going to Michael Mayer all the time, like do guys kind of start to take for granted, like, well, the ball's probably not coming to me. And then the next thing you know, it's like, boom, it's coming to you.
Yeah.
Again, part of that, a big part of that is just right here between the ears. But I think with an off season, a new approach, a new quarterback, just everything being different, I think that we can actually see Lorenzo Styles be Lorenzo Styles, and he can be the guy.
I love it. I love that pick, Sean Stiers. Well
done.
Right.
And I mean, I think that if that's the case, that's good news for Notre Dame's offense.
Oh, it's great news because I think right now he's a forgotten part of it. I mean, the average fan has forgotten all about Lorenzo Styles, and I get it. I understand why, but if he can come back and just be that guy, man, this offense can absolutely take off. It just can. Oh, exciting.
Fill in the blank. It's blank that Boston College fired former Notre Dame tight end coach John McNulty after just one season as offensive coordinator.
What the heck did they want him to do? In a terrible offensive line. He didn't recruit those kids.
Right.
They lost their starting quarterback because of the offensive line. I mean, let's be honest. So they're playing with backups all over the place. What are they looking for here? Bad move. Absolutely bad move. I think McNulty's a good coach. I don't think that they gave him a chance. That's cutting off your nose to spite your face.
I think that he got scapegoated really quickly because of everything that you just said. He didn't have a chance to come in and really, put his mark on anything.
Right.
Like you said, they had a horrible offensive line that was, they lose all these, it was bad to begin with. Then you lose some guys to injury. Then Phil Jurkovec gets beat up as a result of the fact that they've got a bad offensive line. Really, all that offense had was Zay Flowers, and other than that, it's like, what else did they even have? You know, and I think this was year 3, I believe, for Hafley out there, and I'm sure that for him to keep his job, he probably had to make a sacrificial lamb out of somebody, and it really seems like that's what ended up happening with John McNulty. He just became the easy target. Okay, get rid of him. We'll make a move and go on.
It's just, I feel bad for the guy. And if there was an opening at Notre Dame, I'd bring him back in a heartbeat. An absolute heartbeat.
I know. It's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy's been around for a long time. I'm sure he'll find some work.
Sure.
We hope that he'll find some work fairly quickly. It can be tough though, but there's still a lot of turnover going on right now.
Yep.
Do you buy or sell the Bears sticking with Justin Fields as their quarterback, or do you draft Bryce Young with the number 1 pick in the draft? This is kind of, it's obviously the hotly debated topic right now, and Vince is a Bears fan.
I mean, they have invested an awful lot in Justin Fields. Is he the most accurate passer on the planet? No. But he doesn't have a whole lot of weapons either. Not to mention the fact that he doesn't have a defense because they stripped it and, sold it off for used parts. So I would not leverage my future on an unknown with what I do know, right? I know that Justin Fields has gotten better every year. I know that he is kind of rounding himself out into an NFL quarterback. You just don't know what you're going to get necessarily from a rookie quarterback. You just don't. There's a lot of just question marks there. Now, the kid from Alabama, the kid from Ohio State, they're both good. I get it. But they have other needs that they need to address that are not the quarterback position right now. Drafting a quarterback is not going to fix the Bears. They need about half of a defense, and they need like 2 or 3 weapons on offense before they're going to be in contention for anything. That's not going to get fixed by drafting the quarterback. So that I sell that big time. Stick with Justin Fields for now.
Yeah, I saw somebody say just the other day that if Fields were, like in this draft, he would be the number 1 quarterback taken in this draft. And the guy just became, he has the 3rd most rushing yards in a season for a quarterback in NFL history. And, he missed some games because of injury. And you're absolutely right. There's so much that they need on that roster. You've got the foundation. You've got a they've only basically sniffed his talent because, people are talking about, well, he's running because he can't throw. Well, it would help if he actually had some legitimate receivers to throw to. And that's why I would say there is much more value, like draft picks in the NFL are like buying a new car. As soon as you drive the car off the lot, it values right away.
Yes.
You can get more trading the number 1 pick than you can trading Justin Fields. You're going to get a heck of a lot more. You can probably get, you're going to get, if someone trades you for the number 1 pick this year, you're going to get their 1st round pick this year. You're probably going to get at least their 1st round pick next year, if not a couple 2nd round picks and, maybe a couple 3rd round picks. You can get a boatload of picks, and potentially, depending on how far down you trade, you might be able to even trade a pick again, for someone if a quarterback is still out there that someone is looking for. So you might be able to trade the pick twice. So I would say trade the draft pick,
Yep.
stick with Justin Fields. You've got to go out and you've got to get him. I mean, there's so much that they've got to rebuild at this point because just like you said, they've already traded away all their defensive talent, but they also have 0 pro-worthy receivers. You know, they've got Chase Claypool, but he's more and more like as time goes on, it's like, was his rookie year just a fluke because he had Ben Roethlisberger throwing to him? I know.
He was almost invisible with the Bears, and I know they re-signed St. Brown, which, you know, he's a number 3, but he's not a number 1. You know, they need a number 1. If they had a number 1 receiver, I'd be fine having Claypool and St. Brown as the other 2.
Yeah,
I really would. And Cole Kmet is a legitimate tight end option. He's one of the best in the NFL, I think. So you in Montgomery is a pretty good running back. You need to shore up the offensive line. You need a number 1 receiver. That's really all you need on offense.
Yeah.
Focus needs to be on the defensive side of the ball, and then they can't strip it and send it away for draft picks. Like you need a defense.
Get as many draft picks as you can for that number 1 pick and replenish your roster in a hurry.
Right.
That's what I would do. Keep Justin Fields because
absolutely.
I think there's still a lot of upside with that guy. Speaking of quarterbacks from Ohio State, C.J. Stroud declared for the draft today, and today was the deadline to do it. 4:00 was the deadline, and he did it this morning. So do you buy or sell it as the right move for C.J. Stroud?
I think it's the right move. I mean, he's projected to go in like the top 4 of the NFL draft. I mean, going back to school, is he really going to increase his odds that much? And then you're looking right now, he's the second quarterback, maybe arguably the third quarterback, depending on who you talk to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're going into next year's draft guaranteed to be the second quarterback behind Caleb Williams. So
that's true.
Are you really so for me, the decision to go back or go into the NFL draft is, can I increase my draft stock by going back? I don't think he can. I really don't. And there's always
I think you only stand to lose. You only stand to regress
100%
if you go back for another year.
There's going to be some quarterback that I've never heard of from like the Mountain West Conference that somebody's going to get all high on. They'll loft him up to the top as well. So Stroud finds himself second or third again. That's where he's at this year. I don't think he can get better or significantly make himself better if he goes back to Ohio State. Not a chance. You got to go.
Completely agree. Completely. And like when you look at the Bears, like if they decide that they are going to trade that pick, which again, I would think that they would, this actually like kind of hurts them because it's one more quarterback in the draft. If there's one less, it makes that pick at number 1 probably even more valuable for someone looking for a quarterback. But for CJ Stroud, I think the number, like if he's a top 5 pick, he's guaranteed somewhere around $35 million.
It's a no-brainer.
There's too much money on the line to risk going back to school just for really what would just, like be an ego trip of trying to be the number 1 pick in the draft. Really. I just don't think that there is enough for him to improve upon between, where he is right now and one more year in college coming out. There's just too much risk with just look at guys who opt out for bowl games. Like guys are opting out of one game to make sure they're not going to risk injury for the draft. Why would you come back and play 13, possibly 14 or 15 games in a season and risk that when you're guaranteed $35 million?
Is Stroud a true junior or is he a senior academically? Do you know? Off the top
I believe he is a junior.
He's a true junior.
Because he redshirted his freshman year and he has played the last 2 years.
Okay.
So,
all right. Yeah. Because somebody in here said maybe he was thinking about staying for his degree. He's been here for 3 years. He should have his degree. And I'm pretty sure he was an early enrollee as well.
Well, but not all schools, push the curriculum at the pace the way Notre Dame does.
Fair enough. And it's an Ohio State degree. You can go back and do a semester of school anytime.
Right.
Anytime. So I don't think that's even on the table at all.
Right. Oh, so Vince, going into tonight's Cowboys-Bucks wild card game.
Here we go.
You knew it had to come up sooner or later. There's been a lot of talk about how the Cowboys haven't won a road playoff game since the Aikman-Emmett years, 1993 to be exact. It's been 30 years. So Mike McCarthy pulled out some baby photos of there are 10 players on the current Cowboys roster who are actually alive at that point. Everyone else was not even alive at that point 30 years ago.
Yeah, I believe that.
So 10 players, they pulled out the baby photos, and he did it to prove a point that basically it's like, look, you guys have nothing to do with the lack of road playoff wins over the last 30 years because most of you guys weren't even born at that point. So do you buy or sell Mike McCarthy's motivational ploy?
I buy it for the media. I don't buy it for the team. I don't think the team gives a crap about any of the media talking about, oh, it's been since 1993. Like first of all, that's ancient history, obviously, to all these guys. They're not, all they're looking at is this year. So that was a media thing that he used. And I mean, I kind of like it. I kind of dig it, thinking outside the box a little bit.
Sure.
He actually had to think about it and go get baby photos from those 10 players.
True, too.
It's kind of impressive, if I'm being honest. And so
Hey,
I kind of dig it. I kind of dig it.
Hey, DeMarcus Lawrence, what do you have in the way of baby photos
It's
laying around?
I mean, it's a little weird. It's a little off the beaten path, but I'm down with it, man. I have no problem with it whatsoever. It's a nice media conversation. I don't think it has anything to do with how the players are going to play or how they're motivated or not motivated.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the very least, you're trying to at least distract their brains, keep them loose, and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
I'm sure everyone got a good laugh, because they probably took the photos and like put it up on the projector, and did that kind of thing. So you're right. How much is it actually going to matter? Probably not at all. But I think especially when you're in Dallas and the microscope is there, and then these kind of trends start coming. I mean, that's all it took was this. As soon as the season ended, all you heard about was lack of playoff wins, and then they're this much better on artificial turf. They're this than they are on grass. So now they're on the road playing on grass where the trends don't favor them, so that's basically all everyone's been hammering all week long. So you try to distract them from it a little bit. Will it matter? I don't know. I just know that my first cocktails are going to be starting here in less than an hour.
Is your wife ready with the cart and to be the bartender tonight?
She's going to be rolling it out. That's for sure. So, I don't know. Like Jesse and I were texting and talking earlier today. I've got to make sure that I keep the Twitter away from me because that's when I get into trouble is when I start having a couple pops and then I start mean tweeting the Cowboys, so.
Yep. So true.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what kind of mood I'm in tomorrow. I don't know. I'm not feeling particularly good about it, but.
Well, you know what? I'm actually looking forward to this game. It's going to be fun to watch, and I'll be thinking of you. Don't worry.
I'm sure. All right, last one tonight. Speaking of motivational ploys, fill in the blank. Mike Bray said on his ACC media call today that he brought a box of Krispy Kreme donuts to his team's weightlifting session Sunday to lighten the mood after they fell to 1-6 in ACC play with their loss at Syracuse, and that is blank.
Desperate. I mean, it reeks of desperation. Like, that's the best you've got? A dozen donuts? Like,
donuts.
I mean, dude, it's time to hang up the whistle. Like, that's how I feel about that. Like, he's driving to work. He passes Krispy Kreme, and he's thinking to himself, I mean, I got to motivate these guys somehow. There's a sale on a dozen glazed donuts. I'm going to go and grab a dozen donuts, and that's going to motivate these guys to play better in league play. Really? Like, that barely motivated high school offensive lineman on Saturday morning after a win. I can't imagine it's going to motivate a Division I basketball team who's on a schneid in conference play. Like, I'm sorry, man. That just reeks of desperation.
That would be my word, desperation. That's pretty much what it, like, maybe if there were chocolate sprinkles on those donuts, that's like a starting point, but they just keep losing these games. It's like lather, rinse, repeat, and it's a veteran team. It's just
it's tiring. It's tired.
I know.
The whole Mike Bray.
I don't have much more to add to what you said because I agree on basically every point.
I can't believe, and the fact that he did it and then felt the need to tell the media about it. Like, not only did you think it was a good idea to do it, but after you saw their reaction, you're like, man, I got to let the media know about this one. Like, this is going to make me look good.
We're 1-6.
Yes, I don't get it. I don't get it.
I know. Tommy, I'm glad you reminded me. I almost forgot. So Tommy had this, he posted this question early on, and he posted it on the boards today. So he said, your thoughts on the pronunciation of the word GIF, as in like you post a GIF. Is it pronounced GIF or GIF? How do you pronounce it, Vince? GIF, like when you post a...
Right.
Yes.
I've always wondered this, and I always feel like I'm saying it wrong. Either way I say it, but I usually go towards GIF, I think. I think I say GIF.
Like the way I naturally want to say it is GIF because of the G.
Yeah.
But I have heard like what everyone else says, or like apparently the way it is supposed to be pronounced is GIF.
It's like, that's right.
But I say, to me it looks like it should be GIF, and I think I probably say GIF, but I think you're right.
I think I say it both ways with people. I'm like, with GIF, GIF, whatever it is. Like, I like
the hard G.
Yeah.
Vince is going soft G.
I am. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I like peanut
mothers
butter.
Choose GIF.
I like peanut butter. I'm a big PB&J fan. So maybe that's what it is. I don't know.
I can't blame you there.
But I do find it funny that somebody on the board has made a GIF or a GIF of me, Ryan, and Brian when we were watching the USC game, like into like a GIF. Like, I think that's hilarious. Well done on whoever that is.
You just said it both ways, by the way.
I know I did, because I don't know what's right, and I think I go both ways on it. I just don't want to be wrong.
All right, that's going to do it for tonight. We'll see what kind of mood I'm in tomorrow, if we have a show or not.
You and Jesse, that could be a real depressing show.
Whew, no kidding. No kidding. So we'll be here tomorrow. Hit the like button if you would on your way out. Appreciate you stopping by tonight.
The typical Canadian by Father David, our buddy up north. He's just got on here. I honestly thought Sean was wearing a Leafs jersey. Of course he thinks it's hockey.
Man, I mean, you guys just can't get hockey. This is Staubach. This is vintage Staubach is what this is. Come on.
Oh, it's great.
Come on.
Classic. Oh, there it is.
Can you see it?
There it is. I got it.
It's the first time I've worn this in like over a year, I think. So
okay.
I'm hoping it brings a little bit of luck tonight.
I like it. I
haven't pulled it out. I haven't pulled it out.
Have your phone out, because I'll be texting you during the game.
Oh, I'm sure. All right.
I won't be mean. I love you, buddy. Don't worry.
I just had a coughing attack. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Good time to end IB Nation Sports Talk.